Welcome to the Greyhaven's Hour, where we journey not just through Tolkien's legendarium, but into the quiet corridors of friendship, imagination, and faith that shaped it. Today, we begin a new story. Not of elves or hobbits, but of two men, one a master of myth, the other a lover of lions. Together, they walked the rainy paths of Oxford, argued in smoky pubs, and built worlds that would outlast them both. Their names? J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. One Catholic, one Anglican, one steeped in ancient languages, the other in apologetics. And yet, they met, challenged each other, and transformed the course of modern fantasy. In this video, we'll explore how a philologist and a philosopher found common ground in myth, the formation of the Inklings, the legendary writers group Oxford, the impact Tolkien had on Lewis's conversion to Christianity, how Narnia and Middle-earth grew in parallel, and how their friendship endured, even through deep disappointment. This is more than biography. This is a story of an unlikely alliance, and how the right friend can shape the soul of a storyteller. It was a rainy day in May 1926 when J.R.R. Tolkien first met C.S. Lewis in an English faculty meeting at Oxford. Lewis was 31, an ambitious, sharp-tongued fellow from Northern Ireland who taught at Magdalen College. Tolkien, 4 years older, was a philologist, steeped in Old Norse and Anglo-Saxon, and already known among colleagues for his quiet passion for language and mythology. Their first impressions? Not great. Lewis wrote in his diary after meeting Tolkien, "No harm to him, only needs a smack or so." Tolkien, meanwhile, thought Lewis was too quick to debate, too dismissive of religion, and too bold in his opinions. And yet, within a year, something changed. They began to talk. At first, they shared academic interests, Norse sagas, ancient verse, language structures. But soon those conversations grew deeper. They shared poems, critiques, and eventually ideas that would shape their own mythologies. By 1929, they were meeting weekly to read aloud their fiction, and soon they were joined by others. So if you had wandered into a smoky pub or a tucked-away college room at Oxford in the 1930s or 40s, you might have overheard something magical. A deep voice reading lines like, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." This was the Inklings, a circle of writers, scholars and thinkers who gathered to read their work aloud, challenge each other, and, more than anything, to keep the flame of imagination burning. Their headquarters? Most famously, the back room of the Eagle and Child pub, affectionately named the Bird and Baby. But they also met in college rooms, private homes, anywhere they could pour a pint and swap paragraphs. There were no minutes kept, no formal agendas, just fellowship, literary and personal. At the heart of it were Tolkien and Lewis. Tolkien would read early drafts of The Lord of the Rings, often with hesitation. He was famously slow and meticulous, constantly revising and doubting. Lewis, in contrast, was prolific and enthusiastic. He'd blast through a draft of the Screwtape Letters or The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe and offer it up for the group's scrutiny. They were opposites in style, but shared a single conviction: that stories matter, that myth has meaning, that imagination is not a lesser truth, but sometimes the truest one. The night air was crisp. The air beside Addison's Walk ran quiet, reflecting the moonlight. Tolkien walked with his close friends, C.S. Lewis and Hugo Dyson. Lewis, ever brilliant, ever sceptical, had again returned to a familiar refrain: myths are lies, even though lies breathe through silver. To Lewis, myths were beautiful, but false. But to Tolkien, this was like hearing someone say that the sky was just a ceiling. because myth wasn't a lie. It was the deepest language of truth. So he spoke, not as a theologian, but as a storyteller. He told Lewis that myth is not falsehood, it's preparation. A way in which the human imagination points towards reality. We tell stories, he said, because we are made by a maker. And when we subcreate, we echo that divine creativity. And then the core insight. Christianity is the one true myth, a myth that entered history. That night changed Lewis's life, but it also confirmed something in Tolkien's own heart. He wasn't writing fantasy for escapism. He was trying to make a world that felt true, because it was shaped by the same truths that shaped our world. Middle-earth, for Tolkien, wasn't Christian allegory, but it was myth rooted in the soil of belief, in the sorrow of the fall, the fading of beauty, the struggle against shadow, and the long defeat mingled with unexpected grace. They both fought in a war. Tolkien had seen the mud of the song, in the war meant to end all wars. Lewis would fight in the next one, the war that didn't. Tolkien didn't talk often about the war in public, but you can feel it in the soil of Middle-earth. The dead marshes, the blasted plains of Mordor, the quiet courage of soldiers like Sam. By 1918, Tolkien later wrote, "All but one of my close friends were dead." His grief didn't turn him bitter, but it gave his story gravity. And Lewis? He too saw battle, was injured by shellfire, and later helped evacuate children from London during the Blitz. But what war did to Lewis was this. It made him hate false hope, and that's why Tolkien's writing spoke so deeply to him. Because it didn't flinch, it grieved, and then it endured. If Middle-earth had the Fellowship, Oxford had the Inklings. Not a formal society, no charter, no minutes, just a gathering of minds, brilliant, opinionated and loud. Tolkien once said that they were more fond of sounds than sense, and he meant it kindly. The Inklings included others too. Charles William, whose mysticism fascinated Lewis and baffled Tolkien. Owen Barfield, who explored the evolution of meaning in word. Hugo Dyson, who famously moaned, "Oh God, not another elf," while Tolkien read aloud. Tolkien famously disliked Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, too rushed, too allegorical, too full of conflicting myths. And Tolkien, for his part, found the Silmarillion too dense, too unrelenting in its gravitas. But despite the grumbling, their group held together. They believed that myth was not a lie, but a vehicle for reality. Even the closest friendships in Middle-earth were not without sorrow, and neither was the one between Tolkien and Lewis. Some say it was Lewis's growing fame, others pointed to theological differences, or Lewis's surprise marriage to Joy Davidman. Whatever the cause, the warmth cooled into distance. Still, Tolkien never stopped respecting Lewis. "I feel like an old tree that is losing all its leaves one by one," he wrote when Lewis died, because despite the silence, Tolkien loved his friend. And grief, as he well knew, is the price of such love. Lewis's legacy was immediate. Tolkien's came more slowly, and then all at once. Lewis wrote fast, Tolkien wrote slow. Lewis was fond of neat endings and clear truths. Tolkien preferred sadness and song, where hope lived side by side with loss. And yet, neither path was wrong. Together they proved that stories could carry soul, that fantasy could be sacred. Two towers, side by side, sometimes distant, always standing. Together, they resurrected the idea that storytelling matters. Tolkien once said that the best fantasy gives us a glimpse of joy, a fleeting vision that he called eucatastrophe, the sudden turn towards hope. And Lewis said that reading good stories was like waking from a long sleep. because their stories weren't meant to distract us from the world. They were meant to help us love it more, to endure it, to see it redeemed. The friendship between Tolkien and Lewis gave us more than Middle-earth and Narnia. It gave us a torch to carry forward. Thank you for walking with us through the lamplit rooms of Oxford, where pipe smoke, ink and imagination shape the stories we still carry in our hearts. Tolkien and Lewis did more than write books. They challenged each other, sharpened each other, and in doing so, they gave us entire worlds. Their friendship wasn't perfect, but it was real, marked by debate, affection, and a shared belief that fantasy could bear truth. If you've ever found courage in Frodo or wonder in Aslan's roar, you've felt the echo of those Thursday nights. The Inklings reminds us, stories matter, friendship shapes us, and sometimes the best magic begins around a table. If this spoke to you, subscribe, like and share, and join us next time. Until then, may you never stop wondering.